On a story that would make Jesus roll over in his grave if he were technically still in it, a New Jersey Archbishop decided to sell church assets in order to build himself a new 3,000 square foot extension to his home that he will retire in. Archbishop John Myers is planning on spending $500,000 from the sales of underused church property in order to build this extension that will include a library, an indoor exercise pool, and what has been described as a hot tub, because nothing says I'm living in the shadow of Jesus Christ like an indoor spa. The house itself is nothing like the austere dwellings of the faithful because it features 5 beds, 3 baths, a 3-stall garage, an elevator, and a swimming pool. Maybe the pool is there for baptism. I don't know. Maybe. Oh, did I mention that this house also sits on 8 acres of prime Newark real estate? I do declare. Luckily, Archbishop Myers is being called out on the level of bling that would make Little Wayne blush by many fellow Catholics. Parishioners are practicing the austerity Myers refuses to by cutting off donations to the church. The Archbishop's spokesman, in the definition of irony, appealed to these non-tithers by saying that by withdrawing your support, who are they harming? The very people that we as a church have pledged to help. Oh, you mean the poor, right? Unless that $1 million residence is going to be used as a homeless shelter, I really don't see it being used to help the poor. Now, in an editorial in the National Catholic Reporter, said that the arrogance and self-importance required for such a use of diocese assets was breathtaking. This is clearly the material of episcopal scandal, hedonism, undisguised, and a level of clerical privilege that knows no bounds. Thoughts?
Well, like, for me, like, the Archbishop's defense, he's going, what? I didn't install a wine cellar and home cinema? Like, come on, I need a hot tub. Like, it's outrageous. And the problem I have is that, you get these stories, this is kind of a large-scale story just with the amount of money that's involved. But there's, with all religious leaders, there's, I don't know what portion of it, whether it's a large or small kind of percentage, that they don't really believe in kind of the teachings of their own book. Because if this Archbishop, and to be honest, like the other ones as well, this is an extreme case, but if they truly believed, in the teachings of the Bible, the whole, eyes and camels and needles, that whole thing, like, they'd be living in a cave sort of thing. They'd be living in an absolute shack, in absolute poverty, and giving all their wealth to the other people. But of course they don't, because they don't really believe. They pick and choose in the things that they want to, that are convenient to them in their book. And the fact that he wants to spend kind of, $300,000 or whatever, or increase the floor space by 300,000 square foot.
A 3,000 square foot, and it will cost about $500,000.
Yeah, and
this place was bought originally by the diocese for $700,000.
It's ludicrous, and the fact that kind of the people are saying, "Oh well, now I'm going to stop giving money to the church." It's like, have you seen the Vatican? Have you seen how much absurd wealth they have? Enough like gold bullion and gold reserves to just end world hunger if they just sold it all. Like they could do that easily, but they decide like not to. Like the fact that people have now decided, oh well, this is a bit too much money that they're wasting on their own kind of hedonistic lifestyle, so I'm going to stop giving money. Why didn't you stop ages ago? Like, why is this the trigger point for you? It's just ridiculous, the entire situation.
All right. Yeah, good points, man. Sean?
Yeah, so I actually think this guy is living perfectly in line with Jesus. How are you going to walk on water if you don't have a pool? But, yeah, obviously this guy's kind of... maybe the worst bishop ever, but then again, as far as I know, he only stole money and he didn't rape any kids. So,
well, there is that German bishop of Bling. Remember that? I think he might be a little bit worse, but I believe he was defrocked.
I think this guy is made to look worse now that the Pope is doing a lot of symbolic things to make himself more humble, like he wears the Iron Cross instead of the golden one and all that. So this looks a lot worse now, but I feel like this is like part of what big mega churches always do. Like there's always somebody who's pocketing the money somewhere along the line. If you just have an organization where a lot of people are giving money to a little bit of people, then somebody's gonna figure out a way to snatch some of that money and spend it on ridiculous things. So I'm actually not like that surprised by the story. It just looks bad because it is bad.
Well, I mean, it was L. Ron Hubbard, I think, who said kind of the best way to make money off people is to start your own religion. And that's what he did with Scientology, and became a millionaire. And I mean, it just must be so easy for these people. I mean, there must be so many, kind of, especially kind of more kind of corrupt places in the world with these religious leaders, kind of in your Indias and in kind of certain countries in Africa and stuff. That these people are kind of giving their money, and they're not well-off people anyway, and giving it to these vastly rich people. I mean, Mother Teresa stole. I don't want to go off on a rant about Mother Teresa because she was an evil woman in my opinion, but like she took a whole amount of money from the poor and just kept it for herself. And it's what so many religious people do. Now there are, again, can't say all religious people are like this. Kind of the vast majority, they're humble. They believe in a heaven and a hell and all of that sort of stuff. That's fine, but there's still a significant number that are just in it, for the money and for the power, and, for the prestige that they get, and it's awful.
But it's not even religious people, right? Like I know this is a religious story, but just it's anybody who's like, and I don't want to like sound awful, but anybody whose work is so called for the good of like society, like you better double check what they're doing, because you could look at there's great documentaries on school corruption where they just bring you all these articles of like principals stealing field trip money, administrators stealing this kind of money. Like anywhere where there's kids involved and somebody's supposedly helping somebody, like you better watch the fuck out. Like double check, triple check, because I guarantee you that somebody is hiding behind that veneer to try and take advantage of people. So like I don't want to like say never give money to anybody or anything like that, but just be very careful, because people who will take your money and represent themselves as helping people who are disadvantaged. Like that's just the way we are.
I mean that's the reason why kind of these sort of stories, particularly as you said, kind of happen in kind of school situations and so on, but with kind of in religious institutions, it's just so much more morally kind of awful. Anyway, because they are preying on like vulnerable people. A lot of these people, they're not wealthy. These people are, giving over kind of money at the end of each service, and they're also kind of, I suppose you could argue, kind of like spiritually vulnerable. I mean, I'm an anti-theist and I don't believe in any like spirit nonsense and what have you. But they genuinely believe what these people are saying, and these kind of archbishops and stuff who are doing these sort of scams, they know that their kind of parishes believe in what they're saying, and they know that, but they still take advantage of it, and that's why I just think it's an extra level of evil.
But the reason I wanted to just say it's not just churches, because I mean there was a New Jersey school scandal where they were supposed to build a new school in a poor neighborhood, and like $1 billion just vanished from that program. Like the school corporation had to change their name because they were like people hated them so much. Like so there's like anything where, and this is just my general rule, like anything that is helping kids, like Jerry Sandusky, if you guys remember that scandal, like it was under the veneer of helping disadvantaged kids. Anything where like they're helping kids or there's something like where it's all supposed to be, it's anything that is specifically designed to discourage suspicion, you should be suspicious of, especially when there's a shit ton of money involved. Like there's the other religious guy in Korea that he got convicted of stealing all that money, and he had to like recently pay fines. Like it's not a religious thing. It's really a position of trust and moral authority thing.
I think the reason why people get more annoyed at these religious ones, apart from like kind of the more moral thing that I just said, but also is that religious people get away with it more. Not as in it's more prolific, but they don't have as harsh a sentence. If you're a priest who's abused kids and stuff, you don't get as a harsh a sentence as if you're just a teacher or something. That just seems to be the case, and he can hide behind this veneer of saying, well, I'm still a godly man, and people think that, if you say you're a person of faith, that means you should be respected more. And it's like, what? You're a person who doesn't rely on reason and logic as much as other people, and therefore you should be respected. That's mental. People have saying that you're a person of faith doesn't mean you should get any more respect. And he thinks that because he's considered a person of faith, that he can get away with this sort of stuff. It's just ludicrous.
Well, I think the lesson that you can kind of take away from this is just because you may say that you're a religious person doesn't necessarily mean that you're more moral or better than anyone else. You're a person. You're a regular person, and sometimes regular people do take advantage of other things, and sometimes regular people just fuck up. And that's just sort of the lesson that you can take. Now, this guy obviously was taking advantage of his position over others, and you can't deny that.
Yeah, we're all humans. He's a human, I'm a human, and all humans are greedy. They will take advantage of people from time to time. We're not all perfect, and why people would think that, these holy men in any religion, I know this is a kind of Catholic church, but in any religion, that, they're not going to do any wrong at all. Well, of course there are. They're human. We're bound to do wrong.
And I think that's the most important thing that you can kind of take away from a lot of these stories is that, yeah, people are people, and people are going to fuck over each other. And that's why you have to really be careful about, who you put your trust in and what you put your trust in as far as when it comes to people in positions of authority. Religious figures. A lot of them some of them are going to fuck you over. Not all of them, but there are some of them that are in those positions of power just to fuck you over. And then, of course, you look at politicians, same thing. They're in positions of power. Some of them are good, but a lot of them, or some of them, are at least are going to fuck you over. So you really have to be careful.
Trust no
who
one.
you put that kind of power and who you trust with that kind of power.
Yeah, just
now, Jordan, did you want to jump in? Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, man, there's so much that's been said. I don't know if I can respond to it all, and I know we're already over time. I want to kind of what Stephen said is totally right. Like this, it's a human thing. Like human beings are going to do this, and what Sean said too. Like it's it's not just religious people. I would carry that even further. Like I don't know that you need to single out things that are supposed to be for the greater good or whatever. I mean, how many times is there a banker in the news for doing something absolutely egregious? And you want to talk about somebody who has no consequences for it, even more so than religious people. And Stephen raised an excellent point there. Now, obviously, what this guy does is just completely out of line with his faith. It's not illegal. But, with, the pedophilia stuff, those priests should be subject to the same laws and consequences anybody else who does that would be. And so, in those instances, Stephen has an excellent point about how for whatever reason religious people seem to be able to get away with it. At least in some instances, more so than other people do. But I want to really kind of go back, if I could, to the very beginning of the conversation, and point out that it's funny hearing y'all's perspective on this, because Sean even said something about megachurches doing this. Megachurches are not really a Catholic thing. That's more of an evangelical phenomenon of the last 50 years or so. Catholics, this particular issue is especially, it's really weird as a Catholic because we can have a legitimate discussion about abuse of money in the Catholic Church, and what you have then is you look at opulent cathedrals and offices and church-owned property that the officials in the Catholic Church get to enjoy. You can have that discussion, and that's a great discussion to have. But what you don't see though then is that or the way they justify that, again, right or wrong, is that that's property of the church. This guy is taking these funds for his retirement home. It's not he's not doing this to a church. He's not even doing this to the what you call a parsonage, where you're or the home where your pastors live or whatever. He's doing this to his retirement home when he is no longer serving the church. So that is a very very much more in line with criticisms of the evangelical church and megachurch pastors who have tons of money that they use for private use than it is for some of the criticisms of the Catholic Church. And that's why this story stands out to me. Actually, the Catholic Church is their consistency and what they do for the poor is one thing that really makes me drawn to Catholicism. I didn't quite make it to Rome. I stopped in Canterbury, and Stephen's probably the only person in the room that gets that. But this is just a really strange story. Now, I think a spin on this that we can take, I would be really interested to see. Like, so we've talked about the Bishop of Bling, who got defrocked, and his extravagant stuff all got turned into something to help the poor, which is awesome. But remember a little while back, I don't know if you guys remember, like pretty much, I forget who all the big millionaires were behind this, but basically like the same way that rich Americans hold politicians hostage, they did that to the church. They were like, hey, if this Pope keeps talking bad about capitalism and greed, we're not going to donate any money to the church. So I would be kind of interested to see if an American archbishop gets the same just desserts that a bishop in Germany did, because in Germany, maybe our European expert can correct me if I'm wrong here, they don't really have to rely so much on donations, because there the church actually can levy a tax on people who are quote-unquote Catholic. Whereas in America, it's all about big donors and stuff like that. People have to give of their own volition. So I would, I would like to think that this Pope Francis, I really like the guy. I think he has the balls to do this, but I still think it'll be interesting to see, and that would be an excellent critique of the church. If they don't do anything about this guy to show like, hey man, you're beholden to big money just like all the other broken systems of the world are.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't claim to be a European expert, but I know that, like, in the case.
Yes, you do.
In the case.
More importantly, I claimed that you were a European expert, therefore it's true. Continue.
Okay, I'll take that title then. But like here in the UK, a lot of the, like when you kind of look at your average, kind of pastor or kind of priest over here and compare them, or kind of the typical view of an English priest compared to an American one, that's kind of they're humble. I know a couple, that have recently, kind of gone into the church and become, priests and stuff, and they don't make a lot of money. Like they're kind of really humble, and even like the archbishops here and stuff, they don't live in, massive mansions or anything. Even kind of the Archbishop of Canterbury and, the Archbishop of Westminster, like, okay, they're wealthy people, but they don't necessarily make their money from kind of like raising money off corporations or, large donations. They do it by, writing books and, going to like conferences and speaking there, and then obviously kind of the church will, pay them a certain wage as well. That's how they kind of get by, and they're not. I mean, they're still vastly wealthy. They'd still probably be in the 1%, kind of the Archbishop of Canterbury, but most of them aren't. Like it doesn't seem to be that much greed in the English church as compared to the American church, and I think that's just a bit of the kind of culture sort of difference between the US and the UK. So,
well, and it's funny you say that, Stephen, because I'm actually going. Hopefully, if we can, strike the funds together, I'm going to go see N.T. Wright do a couple speeches here in a couple weeks. He's formerly the Bishop of Durham, real big New Testament theologian from England. Anyway, your criticism of it's funny you say, like, in my experience in America, Anglican priests, Episcopal priests, typically are fairly wealthy. Actually, the church I'm at right now is a church plant, so our pastor doesn't even really have a salary; he has more of a stipend. So he's certainly not in that group. But Catholic priests in America typically not wealthy at all, and that's why, like I say, that's why this guy stands out. And of course, he's not a priest. He's an archbishop. He's not over a church. He's a big guy or whatever. He's over an archdiocese. But that doesn't excuse it by any means. But yeah, I would love to see a comparison of your more evangelical pastors in England and evangelical pastors in America. And it would be a weird comparison because there's just so many more evangelicals. Like the data is going to get skewed, in America.
I can't think of any, like, pretty much every kind of crazy religious story that we ever have in the news here is either it's some kind of radical Muslim cleric who we're trying to deport back to Qatar or somewhere, or or it's kind of like Catholic priest who's abused kids. There's no kind of real Bible bashing extremists. Like, just in our culture, we've gotten over that hump, and we will kind of mock and ridicule these sort of people. Whereas and because we're still considered a Christian nation, I don't agree with that sentiment at all, because I think a lot of people in the census say, oh, I'm kind of a Christian, but they don't go to church or anything like that. But kind of we will quite happily mock religious figures here, whereas in America it's still seen as, I get the sense it's still a bit more of a taboo, like, oh, they're still holy men and they should still be treated with a bit of respect, which is, I think it's ludicrous.
Well, America is still primarily Christian, too. You know, we still have more Christians than anything, even though there are a rising number of people who are professing no religion or no preference for religion. So, right. But we're still majority Christian here in America, and I don't think that's quite true when we're talking about Europe, because they're increasingly atheists, they're increasingly secular over there.
But they also the difference is if you give a speech in America and you reference God to sell a political point, in most of America you're gonna get votes. Like in England, you'll lose votes if you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Well, I think in England, if David Cameron or Nick Clegg, like, being religious, like they'll say when they're campaigning and stuff that kind of, oh yeah, kind of I am a man of God, I do believe in Christianity and stuff, but they'll maybe say it once in one speech and that'll be it. And if they kept on saying kind of God and Jesus stuff, a lot of the audience kind of in the debates would just be rolling their eyes and just going, oh, just why is he talking about this sort of thing? Whereas in America, it's important that your leaders are religious. Here, it's just like, okay, they can have their own religious, but as long as they don't bring it into the Houses of Parliament, we don't care. And America's just got to get over this hump. Like, you've just got to. I know you're kind of a relatively new country, and you'll eventually grow up. You're kind of in your teenage years at the moment, and you just need to grow up a bit and get over this religious.
Hold on. I've got to push back against Stephen here, because bishops in England, he said you can't bring religion into the Houses of Parliament. Bishops in England are members of the House of Lords.
Yeah, this is well, I mean, this is the thing though, is that a lot of people, there's a huge movement now from all three major parties where they're trying to say, yeah, we need to change the way the House of Lords works. I mean, it's a bit similar to, kind of similar in that you have your House of Representatives, which is our House of Parliament, and then we have our House of Lords, which is a bit like your Senate. And the House of Lords, a lot of them are, well, none of them are elected, and some of them are hereditary. There's a large, or kind of a significant portion that are just kind of bishops, as you've said. But a lot of people are saying, this is ridiculous. Why are we just having? Because they're all just old white men, and it's people are now up in arms about it. And we will get rid of that soon. So yeah, it's a fair, like Chris point out, but at least we're making some kind of movement against it.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip, make sure to like and leave a comment below, or even share. Sharing is caring. If you want to see more TYT Nation videos, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TYT Nation. Thank you for watching.